Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy, and you can't see my eyes, and I'm just going to resolve that a little bit in this moment. Give me 1 second. A little bit of adjustment. I always think I'm ready to go, but I never truly am, but I guess you can tell by the state of my face when I hit that live button. I just had that kind of uh-oh kind of look on my face, but we are up and running, you guys. Today I was actually looking at glasses. I have a certain frame that I like. I've always appreciated, that somebody who does wear glasses and the prescription that I have, like great big thick magnifying glass lenses in my frames. And there's a certain size, like I like the rectangle and the square frames. So I was in there and taking a look at different frames because the styles do change. And even though, I'm not fussy, I have a sense of style about myself. I'm not really particular about being right on top of fashion. But in knowing the frames that I do like, I went in there and I started to get a head start. Sometimes it's in that head start that we find that we can cross that finish line a little bit sooner. It's called preparation, and lots of us, we don't prepare for too much, up until maybe a half a dozen years or so. I always flew by my seat of my pants. I always adapt and conquered and rode the waves. La di da di da. And when I got smacked upside the head with something, that I would deal with it in the moment. And then I would just carry on. And I've lived that way my entire life. But that is in the unexpected, right? And, there's got to come a point in our lives when we have to grow up. We have to become adults, and we have to have expectations for ourselves. And the first thing I did when I woke up to some of these ideas is, you know what? We're going to start making some movement. Movement is scary, especially for somebody who's highly sensitive or empathic. Hello, Tammy. I'm just taking a look at what's available, what the cost is, and whether or not I want to try going back into the progressives, right? And I'm not too sure yet. It depends, like I said, it's we're talking about goals, right? And in setting goals, I find that I can move ahead. I have a sheet on my fridge. It's all magnetized there. I look at it all the time. And it's a goal list of things that I need to accomplish this year. And that's not something I've ever done up until 6 years, 7 years ago, when I just first started practicing mindset, when I first started waking up to the idea that possibly, you know, I always thought that I was getting my life beaten down by others. But I've come to realize, for the most part, it's in that sensitivity that lots of us have, that we don't feel like we're worthy, right? We don't feel like we deserve the good things in life. We don't think that we deserve the partners we want. And for a lot of those big dreams that people have, they were never ever an expectation in my life. In fact, when I got married, it blew my mind, right? Because I was brought up in the understanding that, these things were not going to be a part of my life, that I was not worthy of them, right? and not just worthy of, not being able to have my fairy tale wedding. And it didn't stop me from dreaming about my fairy tale wedding or the man that I was going to marry. It is in that daydreaming and that fantasizing for something better for us. But I didn't really recognize that what I was doing was manifesting that for myself. And I am so grateful that I got to have that opportunity to meet my Prince Charming and to have my Cinderella wedding. I didn't manifest the fact of happily ever after. I just wanted to be married and, right, I just wanted these things. And somehow they came into my life. Now, they didn't stay because I didn't specifically, right, manifest that ever after. And it's even, when I manifested, I believe, because I got to be a very big girl. I got to be up like 311 pounds. And again, it was these ideas that these things were not for me, but it didn't stop me from daydreaming and wishing and admiring the nice clothes on people that they just didn't make nice clothes for larger women. Especially when I was a teenager, it was just like, oh my goodness, everything was stretchy. And not like there's anything wrong with stretch pants and stretch clothes, they're super comfortable. And I'm appreciative that I wasn't so self-conscious that even after I lost all that weight, that I didn't appreciate comfort. And that's the thing about things that kind of stretch and move. It provides that comfort. There's nothing worse than having something that doesn't fit you well. It's like a pair of shoes that are just too small and you have to go to work and you can't even do a good job at work because all you can think about is how sore your feet are, right? When I was a kid, my mother wore heels like this high, right? It was very common in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Every woman wanted to be like Marilyn Monroe and everybody wore spikes, right? And when I started working in bars and nightclubs and being again self-conscious, and even though I might have had an inkling at that point that, right, that I may have been attractive at that age only because of the attention that I was getting. Um, I really didn't feel like I was that person on the inside. And again, you can wish for these things and manifest these things and daydream about these things and make these things happen. But in my mind, it wasn't a goal. It wasn't anything that I ever strived for. These things just kind of happened for me. Even in losing all that weight, I was 311 pounds and I was just going for a yearly checkup to my doctor. And my doctor was the best doctor ever. He's retired. He's probably passed away by now, but his name was Dr. Rahman, and I right, he was so amazing. And he wasn't big on filling out prescriptions when things weren't going wrong. If there was a homeopathic way to go about resolving an issue, that was what he would be offering. Most of the time, if I went there with a boohoo or something, and I very rarely would go to the doctor, but if I did have a boohoo, I wouldn't hesitate to take care of myself. And I go see the doctor, and he would always say to me, "Oh, Cindy, go for a walk, meditate." I've never been a big meditator. I meditate in my own fashion. I do that in my walks. I have this opportunity, because I don't have kids and I don't have a husband, that I get to spend a lot of time with myself. And I think a lot of the reason as to why I woke up to some of these ideas is because I was available to these ideas. And then in my form of contemplation were those times on my own by myself, right? Or going for walks or sitting at an edge of a lake and looking at a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset, right? This was to me, I think, just as good as doing that oming thing. And, my dad meditated twice a day. He'd meditate for 20 minutes twice a day. He did that, well, all of my life that I've been with him, right? And it just seemed normal for us, right? Because, mom would scream at us, your dad went to meditate, be quiet, right? So we'd all have to hush, or we'd all go out for play outside or something like that. So dad could do his meditation. But that was never my thing, right? Like I said, for me, it was the contemplation, me, spacing out and daydreaming. And even if I didn't realize that I was manifesting at that time, it worked. These things came to me. And going back to my family doctor, it was just a yearly visit, just a checkup, right? And he said, Cindy, he says, would you like me to talk to a specialist, somebody who does stomach staplings? Never even heard of it, right? It's called a gastric bypass, right? And he says, there's a lot of success in that if you would like to try it out. And, I trusted my doctor. He was so amazing and he actually cared about me, right? Not cared for me personally, but because I was his patient and he wanted all his patients to do well. He referred me to a gastronomist, I think they call them. I don't pronounce it properly, some medical name, right? Big technical name, but he referred me to him, and which was really, really strange because he, even though he was a doctor, he had his own way of resolving things for people. And it was in that teamwork, that partnership between the patient and the doctor, that we'd be able to find these ways to, right? I've always been a healthy person. I've always, even when I was a big girl, I was on the vitamins and the minerals, and I was active in bike riding and swimming and walking, right? Never did the high impact exercise. I'm just trying to think. No, never. It never interested me ever. But that movement was important to me. And I was always a mover, sometimes by choice and sometimes just in that way that I care give, whether it was watching over my sisters or watching over the temperaments in the family or looking for the spitballs coming at me at school or the mean things. Like I was always on the move, whether it was physically or even emotionally and mentally, constantly, right? And so those moments that I had to actually omen out in, daydreaming and spacing out, which me and my youngest sister, we can just go, oh, we could be like that for a half an hour, just staring at the ceiling until somebody would, Cindy, what are you staring at? Right. And then you kind of snap out of it. And that is daydreaming. That's going off somewhere else. And that comes specifically from trauma, and that's the way that I escaped. And again, it was meditation for me, right? And it wasn't like I was sitting cross-legged and doing the umming and right and going into myself. And I've tried, right? I have been led through meditation lots of times. I sometimes get really close to it, but never. It's in my hypervigilance that I just can't, in a waking moment, just disappear anymore, right? I'm just too vigilant for the murderers and rapers, right? And that's my thing, right? It's something that I do accept about myself, and I can resolve that if I wanted to put that energy to. But I have to remember that sometimes, we find other ways to manifest in our lives. And I'm grateful for my good health. But again, like I said, these things just kind of fell into my lap. And, uh, I woke up to some different ideas, say half a dozen years ago, 7, 8 years ago, maybe, where I actually did start using lists and writing goals. And they wouldn't be big goals, but things that I would need and things that I would want for myself, things that I thought would better my life or better my situation or circumstances. And let me give you take 1 second here. And I'm just going to grab my list off my fridge here because I've already scratched some of these things off. You guys know I go on this trip every September. It's a very costly trip, especially for somebody who's not working in the moment, right? Putting a roof over my head, putting some groceries in the cupboard with a little bit of reselling that I'm doing. I'm grateful for that, but I'm not getting rich on that, right? But there are things that I do need. And so my fiscal year is at the end of September, I say October 1st, right? When I get home from my trip, I always have it in mind already of things that I need to get done. I have a point list of maybe some goals that I need to do. But when I get home from my trip, I have about a week and then I have to get right into it because the fiscal year ends and you want to look at the past year and see all the things that you've accomplished in the goals that you set for yourself, little ones, medium ones, big ones, and dreams that might not happen, that you don't expect will happen in the year, but things that you're looking forward to. And if they don't happen this year, right, they just go on to the top of the list for the next year until eventually they are accomplished. And, already I have accomplished a few things off of my list, and some of it was necessity. It just had to get done. Some of it again just kind of falls into my lap a little bit. I daydream, I wish for it, it's on the goal list, I see it every day, and then that opportunity or that little windfall comes along and you go, okay, we're just gonna hack this off the list, right? So there are big things and again little things, minority things that there are, because I live my year out and I prioritize, right, the things that are most important during the day, most important for the week, most important for the month, most important for the year, right? And then you have the things that are 5 years down the road, but you don't want to look so far ahead, because if you look so far ahead and you start pushing for those things, it's like bypassing, right? And you forget about the things that you need right now. I had a horrible time after I came home from my trip with my computer. I had no RAM left on it. I couldn't even stream anything. Then my speakers died. And oh my goodness, it was just a mess. But because I have the big monitor, I have these big eyes, right? I really enjoy working on a desktop, right? And then I use my laptop for my work and my live streams and for right, talking to other people and right, just the work stuff, editing my videos, the things that take a lot of RAM. But I do like my big screen. So a new desktop had to go on the list. I didn't know how I was going to manage a new desktop, right? And I thought I was going to have to get a Windows 11, right? I thought a lot of my problems were because I was using a Windows 10, and it wasn't the case. I got a brand new, I was lucky in that it just came into my lap too, because I couldn't get the computer that I wanted because it kept stalling me out. And then my computer was just done. It couldn't even stay on for 5 minutes before crashing on me. And I says, that's it. We have to get a computer. Right. And then I was going to visit with my sister. And then just like across the street from where she lives, there was actually a guy who builds computers, and he was selling them online on Marketplace. And I got a beautiful, right? Lots of RAM. And like I said, I only use my desktop for streaming and taking in my lessons, right? I don't do any work on it except for the research. And I got this amazing desktop for $50. It just kind of fell into my lap. It was just a perfect opportunity, right? And this is what goal lists, right, are helping you with is to recognize, what do you need? What are you looking for your future? And whether that future is this week or next month, or right, don't go too far ahead, but make that goal list and work away at it, right? Hack away at it. Keep it in mind of the things that you need, the things that you want to do, and the resources and the tools that you're going to need to get it done. And whether it's educating yourself, which I have been doing, I have been pounding them back. And I am so grateful. Again, a lot of that just came across my path, and it's in my curiosity, in your curiosity, that we go in and learn a little bit more. I think I am a master student. I really do. Right? The past couple of days I've been kind of disinterested, but I understand that things change, and it doesn't mean that I'm not riding those waves and I'm not adapting and conquering. But I'm also utilizing all those lessons, all that thought leaders out there that have given me such great insight, and my understandings now compared to where I was, say, 7 or 8 years ago, that I can be the example. If not for anybody else, I can be that example for myself, that it works. And it's why I took this list off the fridge, so that you guys can see too. It's not a big list, but it's things that I need, things that I want to accomplish. And of course, the big thing at the top of the list is my September trip. That's my joy, right? So you have to have one big one that makes you burst at the heart, that adds that connection to what's most important to you. And you guys know, right? I explore the outside and my connection to Mother Nature. Like, you can't take that away from me, even though, right, I feel sometimes that I'm so involved in the conversations and in the studies and in the contemplation and hanging out with myself and being that evidence for myself and watching things come into my sphere and come across my path or drop in my lap in an opportunity, that I'm able to check things off my list, right? That desktop was supposed to cost me hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It was supposed to cost me $600 or $700 at the very least. And I got a new desktop that works probably better because I just happened to buy it off a guy who actually is a professional, and he teaches building computers, and he built me a computer, and it runs absolutely perfect. So when I'm ready to get into that Windows 11, right, and that little chunk of cash, that opportunity comes across my path, right, I'm going right back to him. Bypass, right, going to the store and spending $700. I'll go spend a couple $100 with him, and I'm going to trust and be very pleased, guaranteed with what I get, right? For my money. So I was able to knock off my desktop off my list. And that was a big one, especially for somebody who doesn't have much of an income coming into her household, right? The other one that I checked off my list was my new tent. Well, I kind of had an inkling when I came home from my trip. I go, oh my goodness, I need a new tent, but I can't just go and have a regular tent. Like I'm going to be 80 years old and want to be camping, and I'm not going to be able to have the agility to be tearing down and putting up, right? Tents. And it is frustrating sometimes when it doesn't work out for you, believe me, right? But I knew that my sister would be asking for her Christmas list from me. And I put it on the Christmas list. And at Christmas, I was able to knock that off my list. We're just in February, you guys, right? We're just in February, and I've knocked off two big things off my list. The hikers, right? I have lots of good shoes, but for actually hiking, sometimes the my avalanche boots, my winter boots, my spring muck boots, they're too bulky. They're lightweight, but they're too bulky to use as hikers. And they kind of look funny when it's 40 above, right? And you're wearing these big boots. So even though they're good as hikers, I wanted a true pair of hikers. And because I'm a keen girl, I really wanted keen shoes, right? And I went thrifting a couple of weeks ago and I walked into that store, my size, my exact size, brand new pair of Keens. I was so excited. I was so excited. I stacked those things up so fast, make your head spin. I paid $8 for them. When I came home and I researched them, they were worth $200. $200. Like I would never have been able to come up with $200 and not feel right guilt and shame for being frivolous at dishing that money out. But I understand how important wearing good shoes are. And you guys hear me rave about the Keen brand all the time, right? And I'm grateful that I have them, and they came across my path, dropped in my lap for $8, and I snatched those up so fast. But they're not hikers. They're casual shoes. And I need casual shoes too. Never thought that I did, but it's because I wear my sandals all summer long. But, there are times when you just want a good, comfy pair of shoes, whether or not you're going to, right, wear a pair of dress pants with them or something. Like you can't wear your sandals if you have an outing and you're wearing dress pants. So I needed them and I didn't even realize that I needed them. And I got them for $8. Now I can't check that off my list because I didn't really recognize I needed them, but I got them anyway. I have two things on my list that I need, but they're not a priority, right? So there are things like my glasses, right? They're getting done in a couple of weeks, right? I'll be getting new glasses, and I'm going to be so grateful when that's done. Look, I gotta hold my head up, and then you can actually see my eyes a little bit, right? Pull my head down, and I got laser eyes, right? Because I just kind of destroyed the reflective coating on them. But again, these are the things that I do to ride the waves and adapt and conquer, because I really don't have, right? My glasses are going to be probably $800 or $900 after the eye exam, right? So I want to make sure that that I'm not just buying something because they're cheap. And that's what I did with these, right? I saved $400 by getting these glasses, and they weren't the right glasses for me, right? And they didn't work, and they really shouldn't have been suggested to me right? Somebody should have said, "Oh, these probably aren't the glasses for you," because they didn't have nose guards. Like they should actually be sitting up like this. I can't even read through them. I half the time I have to use magnifiers. But I'm not complaining about that because it's in my responsibility. Like when I tried them on, I knew I couldn't read properly. I should have said, "What's wrong with these glasses? Something wrong with these glasses, right? This is not what I paid for." But being that highly sensitive, I don't want to cause waves. I don't want to be the bad customer. I've got to walk out of the store with something, right? That I just took them home when really I should have stood my ground and requested my money back, or I probably would have requested my money back if I had the nerve to bring it up, and I would have requested it, and I would have coughed up somewheres along the line a couple extra $100 and gotten the right glasses for me. They didn't last very long, not even a year, you guys, before I totaled them. I've crazy glued the frame already that snapped. I destroyed the reflective coating. Well, I don't know if I destroyed it, but it peeled off my glasses in any case, right? So I want to make sure that, right, my income tax return comes in, that is the priority. And the priority is just not to get the glasses, but to get the right glasses. And so I'm doing my research right now. And I still want a good deal if I can get a good deal, but I want to have quality pair. And I'm not quite sure if I'm going to go with the progressives again. I think just regular bifocals are going to work for me. I wear my glasses low on the bridge of my nose anyway, right? But the office desk and the office chair are not a priority. If I have to pull a kitchen chair, if this chair falls apart, I'll just pull a kitchen chair up to the desk. We are good. If my desk falls apart, I'll pull my little kitchenette table over here and we'll just use that as a desk. So it's not a priority, but they are things that I do need. And if they should happen across my path because it's on my fridge, I know they're there on my goal list, right? I trust that the perfect opportunity will come across my path and I'll get something amazing. I'm on Marketplace all the time and I see great desks all the time, but I say to myself, it's not a priority in this moment, right? We're doing groceries this week or we're paying the house bills this week. And I'll just trust if that little right manifestation happens, if it comes across my path and I can get a $300 or $400 office desk, right, for $50, I'm on it, right? And this is the thing about goals is you write them down and they're top of mind, and you recognize, when that sparkly comes across your path that is like $500, you got to think, right, is that a priority? You've got a goal list. These are the things you're working on, right? It's not bonus time in the moment. And there are times in life when, right, it is bonus time, like those Keen shoes that I picked up for $8 and they were worth $200. Brand new pair of Keens, my size, right? What are the chances of that? I was so happy, right? I need a new camp chair, but it's not a priority. I have two camping chairs, right? And they are comfy, but I had the privilege of using my sister's camping chair on my last September trip, and I kind of fell in love with it. So I thought, oh my goodness, a nice camping chair would be nice to have. But we're in thrift stores all the time looking for little scores to sell, right? And that perfect camp chair will show up. And will I be spending $150 on it? No. I'll probably be spending $5 or $10 on my dream camping chair, right? So it's not a priority. We're just going to wait for it to come across my path. Here's a big one. And I haven't made it a priority because I have been live and because I have my laptop. It works perfectly fine for me. And I've got webcams with 1080 I could slap up there and make that work too, right? But in all honesty, I would like to have a good camera. So I've been scoping up cameras and I've got it on my list here, right? If I don't get the camera this year, it'll just go on to the top of the list for next year. But that camera is something that I would really appreciate in having. It would serve my brand so well. And even in the moment when I'm just going live, it's not really a necessity. I think, the footage and the thumbnails, everything would be so much better if I had a good camera. And those good cameras, again, they come up. People buy them for a trip and then it sits in the closet and then they sell them, right? For me, one camera looks the same for another. So I actually have to research every camera that I find for $200 or $300 to make sure it's not something from like 1990 or something when digital cameras first started coming. Was it 2000s, right? Early 2000s when the digital cameras came out. And so I want to make sure that I get a camera that's up to date and I could use my Wi-Fi and right Bluetooth and stuff, that it just works really good. And then I could have good 1080 and 4K footage, especially when I'm working with Mother Nature, right? To have that beautiful footage. Because I believe that even in this moment, you know, that if they're not getting a lot of views, right? I post all my landscape photos. They used to go to Instagram, but Instagram is not that kind of a platform anymore. It's kind of a selling platform, right? And people who are introducing themselves to their audience. But I love the idea of being discovered, right? And building up my audience and the people who appreciate me by not, right? I understand influence. I even understand manipulation because as a child, right, I never got anything in life unless somebody felt sorry for me. So I would milk that as a child. Goes against my grain now to do those things. And I think probably that's one of the reason I kind of pulled myself back from Instagram. But yeah, my landscape photos, the only place that I post them to now is to Google Maps, right? And I use that in my Google reviews, and I use them in my September trip when I tour provincial parks, right? And right, my goals, not close by, like far in the future, so I don't dwell in it, but it's stay at the same time in that daydreaming, in that spacing out, those moments happen, and I have the opportunity to manifest those things without me even knowing about it, because that's my form of affirmations and manifesting and meditating and right and magnifying these things to myself, but not as part of my list, but as part of my future. And in those moments where I'm not really into anything, I get into right that contemplation. And then I find these things happen for me. Just like I got to have that operation and I lost all that weight and my life changed. And it was a goal, but it was a daydream as a teenager. It was liking boys and wanting to wear pretty clothes and to be able to have lots of friends. And I really felt like the outside made the whole difference in that. And even though I had no idea what I was in for and having that operation, and it was a very painful and a very scary operation, it worked. It changed my life. And I was so happy for a few years, right? It's when I met my husband. It's when I got to get into those beautiful clothes. It's when I got to fall in love twice in that span of probably a half a dozen years. And then I actually realized that yes, it is what's on the outside that counts, especially for somebody who's sensitive or empathic, because our self worth comes from what other people think. It's a different story for me now, but right, to wake up to some of these ideas and then to see the difference in how I was treated from when I was 300 pounds to when I was like 160 pounds, right? I think I got down to 147, and then my doctor said I was too skinny. And so he made me gain 20 pounds. And I felt good around that range. But then, I was a new wife and new into relationships. All of this was really scary, right? I didn't have much experience with men, and it was nerve wracking for me. And in that nerve wracking, well, you delve into your coping mechanisms, and mine was food. And slowly, it took decades, but slowly I gained 50 pounds back, right? And I've lost 25 pounds of those 50 pounds again. And I'm really grateful for that. But at the same time, I'm not concerned with my weight anymore. If I was 300 pounds, yes, I would work at trying to get that weight off. But for my health, right? Not to impress anybody, right? Not to get into the nice clothes, not to find husband number two, right? I would be doing that for health reasons. Okay, how did I trail off in that? We were talking about lists. Okay. We were, again, it was tied into those goals for myself, right? And some of those goals I achieved on my own steam. Some of them again just come across my path because it's what I dreamed for myself, right? Just in the daydreaming, just in the wishing, right? And I got those things. I have no idea how I managed to do it because like I said, for the most part it just kind of happened for me. But I didn't ask for that happily ever after. I didn't ask for forever, right? And slowly the weight came back on. My marriage fell apart, right? And I fell back into the negative and into some fresh coping mechanisms because in trying to keep the weight off, you got to have that coping mechanism. And so gambling, VLTs came out. I go like this, slot machines. That was my thing. And slowly I got back into that negative, and it didn't take me long, right? A few years, and right, my marriage was falling apart, right? I was lying about how my money and my tips. I was making more money than my husband, and he worked in the Canadian military. He was making good money too, but I was making more money than him, and he had to pick up that slack because right, I was covering my issues with gambling by shuffling the bills and letting my husband accommodate, you know taking up the big slack of the things that we needed in our life, right? And yeah, so slowly I went down. Remember what I said, once you're in that negative state, nothing good comes into your life. You just stay in that negative state. And I just went straight back into gaining weight and gambling, and my marriage fell apart. And oh my goodness. But in a way, it was a good thing that that happened because you have to crash. You have to hit the ground to recognize truly what you've done to yourself, right? And what you've done to others. And I think it was around that time that I found mindset, that I found ways and to pull myself out of that, well, they call it bucket of crabs, but to be able to do that without stepping on other people's heads. And I just wanted my freedom. And again, it was in those dominoes of things that I didn't realize that needed to be happening, but they happened anyway. And it just gave me a little bit of push forward a little bit into what I needed, like prerequisites, getting those little things out of the way that can make you free to be able to accomplish the bigger things, right? That was the evidence for myself to recognize that, setting goals for myself was probably for the person that I was, right? Was the best way that I could do it. And I knew that there were lots of things that I needed to do right away before, right? My life started going backwards again. So I concentrated on those priorities. But when those priorities were taken care of, right? And I had enough tools and enough references and enough lessons, right? That tool belt of mine, that I was actually able to start building a life for myself. Yes, I was well into my late 50s before I woke up to any of these ideas. But you know what, you guys? It's better late than never. I'm not truly out of that bucket. In some ways, I truly am, but in other ways, I'm still stuck there, just like everybody else. I'm bumbling along in life, just like everybody else. And those obstacles and those wrenches in the engine, they're all always going to be happening. But again, I have those tools around my belt that I'll just like whip them out, right? Like a gunslinger and just hack away at them. Understanding if I just move towards that and if I just keep hacking away at other things, right? Will come across my path, opportunities and resources and lessons. And that's the way it has always worked for me in the past 7 or 8 years at the very least. And I've built myself, I think, a very comfortable life. And lots of people say that being comfortable is not good enough. But when you're coming from a situation where you beat yourself up, when you're highly sensitive, when you're empathic that way, you have to be able to do things in baby steps, right? And it's in those baby steps that I made movement for myself. And when anybody says, "Well, that's all fine and dandy for you to say, Cindy, you did it." Well, you can do it too, right? It's going to take you longer because you're doing it in baby steps. But just like I said earlier, the better you get at things, the better you get at things, right? And it doesn't seem so difficult. And it's just in taking those small little bits of movement, it's like the prerequisite for the next lesson and the next lesson until finally you're an expert, right? And setting the goals for me was the best decision I had ever made for myself. And I actually dug myself out of a real terrible pit. And if you've been with me for any length of time, you know that there was a point there during COVID that I had a pretty good chance of becoming homeless myself, right? And I had destroyed relationships. And I can't say destroyed relationships. It's in that determination to keep what's important in your life. But in the lessons, we know that, right? Being around the negative is only going to promote negativity in your own life, in your own existence, right? We only are who we surround ourselves with. And so I decided I was going to surround myself with some smarty pants, right? And that's what I did. And I'm grateful for those lessons because those lessons now are part of me too, right? And I've done such great strides in that. So, but then again, those forward goals that we have, like the SUV and the RV, and being able to retire out on the road and live in provincial parks and work my YouTube channel and have the adventures that I really want to have. And, in losing my vehicle, I thought that my whole life was cut off at my knees, but I adapted, I conquered, right? And here I am. My brand is still going. Okay, it's not Logan Paul, right? I'm not a YouTube superstar. But you know what? I'm okay with that because I'm doing this for myself now, right? And I think when I first got into being on YouTube and wanting to be a YouTube superstar, it was all about the money, the adventures in life, to take that worry off of me. But I didn't realize that taking that worry off of me could be accomplished in other ways. And in those other ways, I didn't have to sacrifice my brand. I didn't have to sacrifice my channel. I explore the inside and the outside, and if all I can manage is on the outside is that September trip, so be it, right? But in my own choices, right? I could take my Google Pixel, which is just as good, if not better, than any camera out there. And actually, if you guys saw that music video by Eminem, it was called Venom, right? Where he was singing his song Venom up on the Empire State Building. That was all filmed with a Google Pixel, and it was amazing. And I've been with the Google Pixel. Well, I was already with the Google before then, but oh my goodness, the footage that you get and the speakers that you get with that phone. And actually, my sister, on my recommendation, got the same phone. Well, she got the new one. She got the new Pixel, but it's the Pixel nonetheless. And she absolutely just loves her Google Pixel, right? There might be a couple $100 more, but you can make payment plans on your phone bill for them, right? It only takes you a couple of years and then that phone is yours. And this year, I'm not going to get a new phone, right? I don't need a new phone every 2 years, especially when I have the Pixel. I have two Pixels. I have my old Pixel, which I just use as an extra camera when I'm out on my trips, right? And it works out amazingly for me. But those things that I look towards for the future, like hiring an editor. If I had an editor, I'm not the greatest editor, um, but I do my very best. And I try to do my videos in a way where I don't have to edit. I just have to splice them together to make a video. And I'm grateful that I have that ability to that I can fill in that space. And I always kind of, in my mind's eye, have a vision for a kind of video that I want to put together, what the message is going to be, what the landscape is going to be. And it's not always I know what that landscape is going to be, right? Because I'm in a park that I've never been on. I'm on a trail that I've never been on, and everything is a surprise and a wonder for me. And I think that's pretty amazing because in that genuineness of being awe-inspired by my experience, people can see that I haven't made little cuts and stuff like that, and they can recognize my genuineness in that. And that's where building trust comes with my audience. So I'm grateful for that lessons, and I'm grateful for the limitations that I have, because if I didn't have my car taken away from me, I wouldn't have probably, right? I would have been on the road. I love being on the road. I love urban exploring. I love camping and being in the outdoors, I wouldn't have been able to do this on my own. It was through the lessons and the conversations and sitting in on topics that I didn't understand, right? Until and there's so much out there, billions of content creators out there in the world. And to have the privilege and the honor of having a lot of those lessons that I needed to be able to come across my path, come across my screen on my monitor, and in my choices of what's being offered, to have been able to resonate in the moment and to be able to receive. Now, of course, I've sat in a lot of, right? And I'm sure lots of us have, right? You sit in it, but it's being willing to sit in it, because if you don't at least sit in it and be willing to take in a different perspective, how will you ever grow? How will you ever learn the truth? Right? Because lots of us, we always just followed directive, and we didn't get that opportunity to follow our curiosity and follow what we believed in, what felt right for us, because again, we're just kind of following the leader, right? And somebody said, I go, oh, I want to go see this movie. And somebody says, oh, I want to go see this movie. I would go see that movie. And then, right, possibly miss out on my favorite movie ever, right? Hello, Eugene. Hello, dear. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I go about making some movement, and it's specifically in setting goals for myself. I have other things on this list, right? But it's in that prioritizing and working on the things that you can do, and just trusting that what's on the list, and you're looking at that list, that those other things will somehow happen for you, right? Whether you're walking down the sidewalk and somebody's throwing something to the curb and you drag it home, right? And you go score. But if it's sitting on the curb and it's not on your list, you'll go, oh my goodness, it's too big, right? I don't need it. And you'll talk yourself out of it. But because it's on your list, when that opportunity or somehow, something comes across your path and you go, oh my goodness, that's on my list. Okay, how do we make this happen? And that's when you ride the waves. That's when you adapt and conquer. And that's where you end up with a $50 amazing desktop computer. And you go, oh my goodness, how did that happen? Or you end up with a $200 pair of Keen shoes. And even though they're not the hikers that I put on my list, they're shoes that I'll definitely wear. And I didn't know that I need. And, I don't go barefoot ever. I don't, maybe on the beach because the sand and stuff. But even then I'll wear sandals if I can, right? I've always got something on my feet. I plan on being on the move when I'm 80, 90, 100 years old. I had the experience of having that fasciitis in my feet when I was in my late 30s. And I thought I wrecked my feet forever. And thankfully, with some lessons and some physiotherapy and some time and some crying and some ouchies, I learned the lesson about taking care of my feet. And I won't even walk to the washroom, right? Get out of bed. I'm looking for my sandals, right? To have that cushion, because these are concrete floors and I want to make sure that my feet are good, right? It's just a little bit of forethought, a little bit, right? We're not looking 5, 10 years down the road. Those are the dreams, right? The goals are the things that you need to accomplish in the immediate, right? And in the near future. And those all happen for me in baby steps. And like I said, I put the SUV and the RV on that list every year, right? You don't know when that big windfall is going to come across your path. But when it does, I know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going straight to the RV lot and I'm going to pick out a beautiful RV. And not only that, I've been looking at RVs for the past, oh my goodness, couple of years now. When a new one comes out, I go in and they give video tours of them. I've been doing researching on vehicles and looking at minivans and possibly setting one up and like an RV and stuff and just hitting the road in my retirement that way. I'm looking at different options. But when that opportunity or that RV comes across my path as an opportunity for me, you can guaranteed I'm going to be on it. Why? Because it's on my goal list, right? It's on my goal list. But maybe these things will be on my goal list, like the SUV and the RV, right? For 5 years. They'll go at the bottom of the list or the top of the list every single year because I didn't accomplish it. But that's okay with me because in the end, right, I'm always changing. Maybe it won't be the RV that I want. Maybe it'll be a Renault school bus. Maybe it will be a little log cabin out in the woods. And what I'm looking for is a side by side or a little quad or something so I can bushwhack. Life is always changing for us, but part of the fun of it is accomplishing. And when you accomplish, you guys see me do it all the time. It makes me feel good because I'm doing things for myself that nobody ever expected that I would be able to accomplish, right? They never wanted me to accomplish. They never expected that I could accomplish. And I picked that baton up and I believe that for myself too. Now it's a different story, right? I love baby steps. I, 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 I tell people all the time, right? It is difficult to set goals and work towards them. But if you set those goals and just have small expectations, every time you accomplish one, you feel better about yourself. And then those goals get a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger until you have that SUV and that RV in your life. And that's the truth. Okay, you guys. All and I didn't even have any of that planned. I didn't plan to come in and talk about goals, but that's a good one because it's exactly what I'm doing for my life, right? In setting those goals, I always have something that I have to accomplish, right? And I can't go anywhere until I accomplish my goals. And my goals will be never ending, right? Okay, you guys, here we go. We're going to pick a card. I actually trimmed out that word, that card. Actually, I didn't trim it out. I made a totally new card. I wrote it out. I took my paper cutter with all my measurements and I just measured it right to the T perfectly. And then I put my old community card in there just as a little keepsake to the fiasco of that card showing up all the time. And we're going to see if that does the trick, right? That if we come off of pulling that card, oh my goodness, it was like 3 times last week that we had that word community, didn't we, Tammy? Yeah. You can't say that that's a coincidence. There's no coincidence, especially when there's cards in here I have never even pulled yet. Yeah, I pull that card consistently along with that word acceptance, but we haven't pulled that card. I don't think we pulled acceptance last week, so maybe we kind of resolved that one in the conversation that we had the week before. Okay, you guys, let's get into it. We're going to pull a card. We're just going to go into it. It's 54 powerful words. They're just powerful words. We're going to go into it. for a few minutes and then I'm going to call it a night. Maybe listen in on a conversation. Sorry, I just dropped a card there. That would have been a good card that we could have gone into, because a lot of, well, I won't tell you what the card is, no point, because we're not going to go into them. I'm already shuffling to get a card. Here we go, you guys. We're going to pull a card out, and it's this card. Oh, we had this card, I think last week, at the beginning of the week. We got this card tonight, integrity. Integrity is the examples that others will follow. And that's true. Remember what I was saying, earlier in my conversation about building that trust, in not making big cuts in my outdoor adventures, and being just able to come in and have these conversations and have people hang out with me and listen to my jibber jabber. And maybe it might not sink in. Maybe it's not a truth for you, but I bet you can see and you can feel that it's a truth for me. And in that manifestation of the things that come into my life, you can see that it works for me. And in being that example for others, it's always in my hopes, right? That somebody is going to say, oh my goodness, that woman knows what she's talking about, right? I don't expect it, but when it happens, right? When it happens, it's so appreciated. And again, it's in that sense of accomplishment, right? It's not saying, okay, Cindy, you're the be all to end all, that you've got all the answers, right? I would never think that way. I bumble along just like everybody else does. And I trip over myself consistently. But I allow myself to make those mistakes, right? I allow myself to have those failures, and not at anybody else's expense, and not even at my own expense, right? Because I understand it's only a lesson. It's only unknown until it's known. And that's the truth. And I think that's something that I can appreciate about myself, that I could come in here for an hour and 15 minutes and just keep that flow going, and to be able to trust that, those lessons, those are very important lessons that I've had in my life, in my experiences, in the conversations that I've sat in on, and in my choices in who to trust, right? That in that experience, I get to learn that just as much as they were the example for me, I can be the example for somebody else. And I think integrity, which is the word we got tonight, is something that each one of us should feel good about in our achievements, in our little bit of movement that we make, in those baby steps, in accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish for ourselves, right? Understanding we can only control our own actions, our own thoughts, and our own emotions, right? We got no say to anybody else's. But, right, when we can be that example for somebody else, right, it's a feel good feeling, isn't it? It's saying, oh my goodness, finally, something's sinking in. You guys, integrity. Integrity is the example that others will follow, right? If you want to give it a shot, make yourself a little list for this year, right? So you're a month late, or 2 months late, right? We're going to say 2 months late. You got 10 months of this year coming up. Make yourself a list. Some big things that you need to do, some big things that you need to buy or accomplish, and those little things, right? Even if it's like cleaning the storage shed, right? Put it on your list. And when you find yourself spacing out, you can space out in cleaning out that shed. And how good will you feel about that accomplishment and taking that highlighter, which I do every time I accomplish something, and I run that highlighter and I use a different color every time. So it's just like a rainbow, right? When I've got my list done for a year and then I put up my new one. And that's the thing, you have to do a list every single year, right? Because when I come home from my trip, I have a week to compound what I want to accomplish for the next year. Because if I don't do that, you go into that disappointment stage, right? Because you've accomplished that big thing that you've wanted. Like for me, that big trip in September is everything, right? If I don't accomplish anything off my list, if I get that September trip done, I'm solid. I'm good with that. But if I didn't get that trip done, right, that would kind of be disheartening. I'd have to ride those waves. I'd have to adapt and conquer, and I would allow myself to feel it. But in that failure, I wouldn't want to fail in that again. And I'd hack away and I would accomplish it the following year. And I would never let my, just like those shoes, right? I wear shoes all the time after having that one bad experience. And it could have been a different story. I could be with the walker or the cane or one of my walking sticks, right? But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my good health, right? Okay, you guys. Okay, let's just see what we've got going on here. Hello, how are you doing? Thank you, Eugene. I appreciate that you popped in tonight. That's so amazing, you guys. For those of you who pop in later, put your feet up. I hope you got something out of this, right? At the very least, it can be another shot tomorrow because I'll be here 9 p.m. I'm not going to say on the dot because I'm usually a couple minutes late, right? I think that's my own way of saying I'll be there when I'll be there. I don't let myself go too far late, but a minute or two, right, is just something I do and something I've always done, right? And I allow myself that. If I get better at it at some point, if I make that a priority, I have to be there right on the button, right? Then so be it. But in my consistency, you guys know I'll be back tomorrow, 9 p.m. or around then. Okay, you guys, have a great night.